So we wanted to talk about something today. And I wonder if anybody has heard of this collective illusion. What is collective illusion? One of our mentors just posted a video about this, and it really touched me as I was watching it. So it talks about how we as humanity have almost like programmed assumptions or beliefs around certain things, how things should be. And if they're not that way, then maybe something's wrong, or maybe something is scary, or maybe we should change it or question it, or and we run into these kind of these collective programs all the time. Like we may even, well, my grand the other day, she said, I can't put those jeans on. Somebody else has them in school. It's like, okay, that's a program. Like now there's an assumption of some sort, a lot about our looks, a lot about how we should live our lives. What is success? What means to be successful in today's world. We have so many conditioning beliefs about that, and this is what that video was talking about, which really do not make any sense. They don't make us happy. Pursuit of money does not make us happy. But it's an assumption that success equals money. So if we go get money, we get success. So any of this touching you?
Yeah, for sure, right? I mean, we live in a society which is constantly trying to tell us what to do, what's good, what's bad. Certain sort of expectations placed on us, and what does it mean to be a good child, a good parent, a good partner, a good student, a good worker, a good boss. And it's just so much, right? Like we just have so many of these ideas of other people, of the society placed on us. And yeah, it's hard to sort of navigate that sometimes, right? It's hard to sort of know even what we resonate with, because we just sort of completely forget, or just our own perceptions or preferences just get blurred or dimmed by in the sea of all the things and rules and expectations that are flooding us from every side. So, I mean, I think I am yet to meet somebody who's not been impacted by something like that in their lives, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And this is really like a huge opportunity for a conversation, because anything to change, it needs first our awareness, our assessment that where are we? And even in, like, we're talking about a macro scale, but we even notice these same things in the micro scale, because everything affects everything. It kind of filters through. So even in the relationships, I've noticed as of late that it's all around me are those kind of relationships, especially with the close family members, that it's hard to find acceptance, like truly for who you are, because there's so many conditions, from our parents, from their parents, from their siblings, different era of time. And now it's a different way of doing things, or even different way of feeling, different way of thinking on things. And all of that conditioning has just put me in a place of question, like, okay, I understand that if I do have clarity of this, what I'm talking about right now, And I would like to take full responsibility of making some changes because of that clarity. For example, just not reacting if somebody doesn't want to accept my view of doing things, just being confident in what I'm doing, like just taking that stance. Maybe not talking to somebody, that makes me feel uncomfortable on those terms, but then there is this other part that has to do with the conditioning. Well, how does that make me feel? That makes me feel sad. I don't want to be disconnected from that person just to have peace for myself, which is completely worthy goal, But you know what I'm talking about? What I mean is there's this pull and push, between the old and the new. When you're conditioned to something, you kind of fit in like a puzzle piece. It feels homey, it feels safe. And then you start pulling yourself away from that, and it doesn't feel so safe anymore. And there comes the questions, and those are good questions. Is this worthy of a cause to just kind of rattle the fences a little bit?
And to sort of give up everything that we know, right? Give up pretty much our reality as we know it, our experience of life, really, right? Because we we have been able to, create certain labels that we have stuck onto ourselves, like I am this, I am that, like I am an introvert, like I am, a graduate of this thing, I am an employee of XYZ, I am a partner to this person, I am a citizen of this and that place, right? And if you were to completely just let go of all these, things, like these sort of roles that you have within society and these labels, and go and move to a different city and find a different partner, or I don't even know, maybe, change your sexual orientation or whatever, like how does that even, right? Like how do you sort of, you've just so associated yourself with these labels and put yourself in a box, and okay, I'm part of this community because I have this in common with all these people. And so it's how you perceive life and how you have trained also everybody around you to perceive you and to know of you. And so that's why it's also so hard, because we're so scared, as you were talking about, we're so scared of how people will react, right? And because they know us in a certain way, and we know that somehow they accept us in this way, and so we don't know, like, oh, but people don't like change and they know me in this way, so if I now decide to express myself differently, or just choose something different, maybe people will not approve because they know of me as this kind of person. And I've certainly sort of, you know this challenge definitely comes up in my life quite often, when I feel like, I don't know, I have studied at certain universities and have a certain type of a profile, so I should be doing a certain type of job and live in a certain way and associate myself with certain types of people and have a certain, I don't know, maybe dress code or whatever, right? And I don't want to do that, right? Like, I just want to be myself. I just want to do what I want to do. But then for some reason, right, I'm just sort of worried, like, people will think that, I don't belong to this maybe group of people because their part of me is sort of stuck in that thing, or has that those sort of labels or history or friends or whatever attached to me. And then these people will also not think that I can associate myself with them because the other half of me is somewhere else. And I mean, it's just crazy, right? Just all this to say, it's just like the brain is like, oh my god, and this is not me, or I don't know what's me, I don't know if I can be this. So yeah, just it's crazy, how much. And at the end of the day, like, maybe nobody even cares. Nobody cares at all what you do, what you say, how you dress, what you decide to do with your life. Everybody's so busy just worrying about their own their own
Yeah,
little lives, right?
exactly. That's kind of the comedy of it, because nobody really has time to care that much as what we think in our heads. And then there's this, that's why it's an illusion. We talk about collective illusion, because it is an illusion. And really the best thing would be for everyone just to be yourself as bravely as you can, and even challenge yourself to just every day bring forth who you are instead of holding it back. And it's just because there's such an impact with that, you know like TikTok. That's kind of what TikTok is about. And it just went viral, like it seemed like over the night. I don't know if it did, but to me, it seemed like it, because those are just people who started making videos of anything and everything without any preparation, just like kind of like what we're doing. We come here, and we don't prepare. And that's why we call it just live it. Because there's that beauty of it, that freedom, but
Mm.
it is also said, I forgot who this was. I showed the picture of it. I guess I can pull it up here. So this guy, his name is psychologist Stanley Milgram, found that 80% of population do not have the psychological or moral resources to defy an authority's order, no matter how illegitimate the order is. And so here he's talking about, power over and power under kind of thing. But this is the same in our relationships. If that many people cannot really critically think and kind of own their own views and perspectives, it's really hard for that 80% to look at you that way, that when you come out of the crowd and you do your thing, it's hard. So there is kind of like this resistance in the energetic collective, illusion. Illusions are powerful, huh?
So I'd like to hear, Kirsty, if you perhaps have like an example, recent example from your own experience when you struggled with this, or when you conquered this, or yeah, if you can sort of, because we've been sort of talking in very general terms until now, but maybe if we can
Yeah.
talk about some examples.
Yeah, it's really interesting because recently, as of like few months past, I've had several of those kind of things happening where there's been opportunities for me to kind of step out and be brave, even though there was like a little collective thing going on that wasn't really seeing that perspective. So at work, I got to have that kind of opportunity, which really felt like it was led to happen that way. So it was easy kind of to step into. Then I've had the same kind of things happening within my family, with my mother, who is older than me, who sees things from a different perspective. And then I'm coming from a different era, from a whole different frame of thought, not even an era, but maybe just my individual way of seeing things. So that has caused a conflict, because it's like, this is one point I would like to also talk about. It's really hard for people, okay, let's say me and my mom now, we're talking about certain things, practical things, maybe even. And so one sees it this way, the other one sees it that way. But then it oftentimes comes an argument, like whose way is better, which it doesn't mean that at all. It's not a which or, it's like both. But let's talk about how we can make something new out of these both. And that's where I've kind of like run into a dead wall, is maybe it's because of that critical thinking part, that people are not just geared to think critically always. I know it's one of my strengths. I kind of go around and just kind of look at from different perspectives, and that's why it's hard to understand, that why we cannot agree to disagree. No. And then there's some controversial things that we, in our journey, we like, okay, ayahuasca, for example. What in our journey people decide to go into, and then that's another thing, because there is a whole assumption, for example, around ayahuasca, which is the natural medicinic tea, that you can be serviced by shamans who are professions at that, but there are different kinds of places. However, there are different opinions around this, very different experiences from people. So I guess our Western society, or societies in general, like to have laws. Okay, we need to have a popular demand for this law right now, so everybody says yay or nay. And it's not like that. And then I have, you want another example? See how many I have. I'm just pulling them off my hat. So many
Go for it.
examples. Yeah. One of them, which I would love to mention since I'm wearing, is the Healy device, and it's a frequency therapy device. And that's causing, like, I notice now, because it's coming to my world, that's like a whole array of perceptions and opinions and assumptions and all of that, which it's beautiful. I think it's lovely, but it also shows that we as humanity, we can really evolve in our conversations. We can evolve to be more curious about each other and about each other's perspectives, and have a little bit like honor in there. It's like, I'm curious, why did you go to that country? I'm curious, like what did you get from being part of that, or thinking like that, or whatever. And I guess in my world, I haven't seen that a lot. In our community, I think it is beautiful, which is, I'm part of some communities where that is existing, but yeah.
So thank you, Kirsi, for sharing this. So I'd like to ask you a question. So you wanted to talk about the topic of authenticity today. So if I may, I would like to ask you if you could sort of define that, or how would you explain that word to people, or like, what do you even mean by that, and why is that a topic for you that you think is worth you covering?
Yeah. I think it's one of the most beautiful values. I was just staring at.
What does it mean? What does it mean to you?
So as a value, authenticity, for example, I can speak from my perspective, and then I can speak from how I like to be received. Like, what value, if I'm authentic within me, in our conversation, in our relationship, you're getting the purest of me, right? So, and being able to be authentic for myself is that I'll have time to stop with myself. I have time to listen. I have time to decide where I need to take responsibility. And so that's kind of the work within me brings the authenticity to our relationship. So it's to honor me, I honor you, and I honor our relationship. And then from you to me, I would love the same. Just that authenticity, which has a lot to do with honesty, being present, listening, holding space, understanding, taking every word that we say to each other as treasure, really like it's a present in this moment. And like somebody asked me some time ago that, did you even mean any of the words that you said? And that was like, oh my goodness. Wow. That felt to me, if I did not mean the words that I say, where would I be? I'm not here, present, and I'm not then authentic. So
It's funny, isn't it? Because I feel like you and me, we're at a place where, to me, I just, when you were just saying that, I just sort of tried to like put myself in that situation and sort of think like, okay, but do I do that sometimes? And I literally just like can't even think of a situation. I'm just like, why would I do that? Like, why would I speak? Why would I open my mouth if I, like, I would not say something that I don't mean. Like if I don't feel a certain way, I would just rather not say anything, but I would not go and just tell somebody that I have, certain feelings about them, or that I would love to do something for them, or that I feel a certain way if I didn't, because to me that's just, it would be very hard for me to do that.
yeah.
But
Yeah.
I guess there's very, very, very many people out there who just operate that way, and it's very normal for them to just say whatever they think is expected of them, or whatever would be the right thing to say, or whatever would get them the right outcome in a certain situation, in a certain conversation, right? So yeah, I guess I'm just sort of thinking about that, how it's even difficult for me now, and as you're saying, like difficult for you as well, right, to sort of even understand that this is the way that so many people function, just because of all the different reasons that you've sort of discussed at the beginning, because we feel afraid of how people will perceive us, or we feel like we're everybody's expectation of us are to act and speak and behave and feel a certain way. And perhaps it's normal, right? Perhaps it's normal to say certain things to people please, to tell everybody that we love them and we want to do things for them when we really don't. And
Yeah.
that's, yeah.
Yeah. And spending so much time in America, it's kind of like part of American culture. That certain kind of superficiality there. And then you kind of become conditioned to thinking like, well, they didn't mean that, or I wonder if they really meant that, or. So, and this is what I believe the kind of the jewel of this conversation could be, an outcome to for us to individually just kind of step into the courage of being authentic, which means, in other words, being truthful to yourself, honoring yourself, and just kind of seeing also that where does that certain action take me? I mean, these are all reminders for all of us. None of us are perfect in these. So just kind of bringing the awareness to that. And making, giving room for conversation. I think that's what humility is about.
Yeah.
Allowing that room for another perspective, for another opinion, and not trying to be right or wrong. but just really
Yeah.
authentically, be
Yeah.
present, hear each other.
Yeah, I mean, sadly, I think for most people they don't even most people don't even know what it means. They can't even imagine a situation like, what does that mean? Like how would you have a conversation and not try to be right or wrong, right? Like we're so used to living in this polarized like yes or no, this or that, black or white, like there's only one truth sort of, right? It's that way, and if I prove that it's that way, then it cannot be anything else, right? And it's sort of back to what you were saying about your sort of relationship with your mother, right? Like maybe there's no wrong and no right way, like, and I can think of so many examples, like for example with different cultures. I remember when I was living in China, and people, like my Chinese friends were sort of telling me about the Chinese medicine point of view on how I should dress and what I should eat when I was feeling that way. I shouldn't eat this or that. And to me at that time, right, I wasn't used to that. And so at first I thought it was totally ridiculous. I was like, this makes no sense. Like, can they just leave me alone? Like, this is just total, like, there's no logic behind this, right? And then I sort of started seeing the logic in it, right? And at first I was just so righteous, right? I was like, this is total like nonsense, like, you know, because my whole life I believed in something, right? And their whole lives they just believed in something. Whereas now I'm super curious about the principles of Chinese medicine, of like, I don't know, eating worm foods and these kind of things. And I don't know, I can't tell you if there are ways, because some things would clash with the things that I believe and that I have always been taught. And I couldn't tell you like this is right and this is wrong. Like I just know there's some merit in all of these things. And I think that's the beauty of exchanges with people from different cultures, people from different generations, people with different backgrounds, schools of thoughts, and different sort of sensitivities and experiences of life. That's the beautiful thing, that we get to sort of ponder like, yeah,
Hmm.
does that feel right, does that feel wrong? Maybe I completely disagree, but how would that feel to even just consider that, like even just to try and, for
Hmm.
even if it was for a minute, to just try to see how could I make this right, how could I believe this, like what would it be if I believed this, what would it be if this was the truth.
Wow. I love that. Yeah, that's beautiful. And
Yeah, so
while you were,
yeah.
did you want to continue?
No, you go for it.
While you were talking, thank you for sharing that, by the way. That was beautiful. While you were talking, I was just getting this perception of two people just talking to one another, and both of them just want to be heard.
Mm.
And I
Yeah.
became to just realize that, well, that's the essence of it all. That's really the foundation. That all of us really just want to be heard and seen. And a lot of times in our relationships, we kind of get triggered because there were those places as a child for all of us where we were not seen, where we were not heard. And so we have these blockages of unhealed moments and energies in our body. And then we come in a conversation and we just start going in and around, and nobody hears each other because everybody has the same wound, same trauma.
Mm.
And then it becomes, you don't this and you don't that and you don't understand me. And
Yeah.
yeah, but I just love that what you just said. It was powerful to just place yourself in that other person's perspective. You know, just be curious enough. Like I had this conversation with you know, my mom a few days ago, and I really felt heard. And it was so interesting that when I felt heard, I actually started hearing her. And I came out of that phone conversation, like, I understand. I understand where she's coming from.
Well,
But that was actually
yeah.
a result of her being able to hear me, you know?
Yeah. And excuse me, I would just sort of like to loop back to what you were saying just a second ago about all of us just wanting to be seen and heard. And so I would just like to highlight that what that means to feel heard, heard and seen is to be heard and seen in our authentic self. So that's how it ties back to authenticity, because if you are saying things which are not the truth, they're not coming from your heart. And if you are not expressing fully and truthfully and honestly how you really feel in all its power and all its intensity, right? If it may be, then yes, maybe you will be heard, but you will not feel truly heard and received and seen as you are, because you will still be hiding parts of you, right? Because you think that maybe that's going to be too much, and if I say how I really feel, then they will reject me, right? And so if we don't if we don't communicate from that authentic sort of place where we really just allow ourselves to be truly, yeah, authentic selves, and express that with its full power, then we just end up spending our lives sort of denying ourselves connection, right? Because if we're not sharing all of ourselves, then we can never be truly received in our complexity and entirety. And so there's always, there's so much, there's still so much more that we could share with others, and just there's space that we're hiding from, which we could also be connecting. So it's like, imagine we're connecting one hand with somebody, but maybe we have, with one finger, and then we have 9 other fingers and 10 other toes that we're just sort of keeping to ourselves, and out with all of our fingers, how much stronger and more beautiful the connection with others we have would be.
You were cutting off there a little bit, so I wasn't able to hear everything. I hope our audience did. Maybe it was on my side. So I apologize for not hearing all of that. But when we just kind of feeling into the energy of that, even I didn't quite get the words. It feels very constructive, beautiful.
No, sorry about that.
Yeah.
Just
So
the breaking.
yeah. So where do you want to go from here, Claire? I think we have just beautifully kind of come around in a circle with our theme, authenticity, and just this public or collective illusion that we carry on that is not really healthy. It's not healthy. Let's just say it like it is. It's not healthy for us at all. And it's actually only an illusion. So we are encouraged, hopefully, by this conversation to continue to live in our authenticity, which I see that our days give several occasions for that. Kind of collectively step into that bravery. By the way, that's part of why I wanted to start making these podcast videos. Because it's beautifully just giving the rehearsal for that, being authentically yourself and not being scared to let your
Yeah,
light
I agree.
shine, you know.
I agree.
Yeah, so
Good,
thank you
Kirsi.
for giving that opportunity as well.
Thank you, Kirsi. Beautiful. I'm sorry about breaking, but I guess you got what you needed to get, and the rest I will save for later.
Yes, yes, it was beautiful. I tell you, I received the transmission for sure. And hopefully our audience heard it. And if they didn't, they received the transmission, you know, so it's all good and beautiful. So should we wrap this up for today, Claire, or do you want to say something? Oh, I think from my point of view, it looks like Claire froze there. Let us wait for just a moment if she comes back here. Can we hear you, Claire, now?
Right, I'm really breaking over here, so I think it's time to wrap.
Yeah, that's a perfect timing to
All right.
wrap.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone, for
Bye,
joining us.
everyone.
And text us in the comment box if you
Bye.
got something out of it, or if you have any questions, or if you have any ideas for our next podcast, maybe. We love you all, and merry rest of the year, and happy new year coming up.